Hello, folks. I'm Katie.
I'm Vinny, and this is Learn Real Good.
Whoa. Back again.
Back again.
Every week. Week after week. Reliable content.
Just an unrelenting barrage of science.
Except for half the year where we do relent.
Yeah. Intermittent unrelenting.
Yes. Temporary consistency.
That's us.
That's what we strive for.
Mm-hmm. Success.
So for people who are new to Learn Real Good, are new learners, this is a show that tries to take a silly view of science, eh?
Yeah, we'll take a relaxed, casual, have a good time, science should be fun attitude.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, like, my first science idol. Let's do this.
Yeah.
My first science idols. I don't know which came first.
Sure.
I know there's two.
Yes.
But would have to be Doc Brown of Back to the Future,
yes.
of
Excellent.
course.
Naturally.
And Peter Venkman from
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters. Those are like the first. And
Everyone who watches Ghostbusters, of their favorite Ghostbusters, I'm going to say Peter Venkman is low on that list.
what?
Yeah.
You are wrong.
Yeah?
I thought you were going to say
Has to be number one. Yeah.
I would say 90% of kids who watched that movie wanted to be
Venkman?
Peter Venkman. Of course. Bill Murray, he's hilarious. And he's cool.
guess.
He makes science look cool.
Egon.
He's not a nerd. Well, of course you identified with Egon, the physicist and the real hardcore science
It's
geek.
very no nonsense, which is
Okay.
why we start a comedy podcast.
I was
'cause-
going to say... That was like a very early depiction of science.
Yes.
Well, early depiction for an 80s kid. And I was like, it's fun.
For sure.
But so often it's depicted as buttoned up and serious time and, you know.
One of my early science fictional models would be the Edison twins. Now, this is an 80s TV show
Okay.
aimed at kids, and in the 80s I was a kid, so it worked out. The Edison twins were twins, and they had a younger brother who would like get in trouble, and then the Edison twins would like have to kind of get him out of trouble using science.
Ooh.
Or there'd be like mysteries in the neighborhood to solve that they would like kind of like Encyclopedia
Nancy
Brown,
Drew?
but using
okay.
Science Nights did Nancy Drew. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It was great.
I've never heard of this.
The Edison twins,
Like, that
and they
even-
had a
even
catchy
happened.
theme song. Look up theme song Edison
You're
twins
not
on
going to
YouTube.
sing it for us?
I don't think I
a
can.
click. Interesting. What were their names?
I don't remember.
No.
I remember the younger brother was Paul. That's all I remember.
Were
Because they were
John
just
and-
like Paul. Yeah, John and Ringo were the other two. It was a brother and
Sorry,
sister.
George. Oh, brother, sister.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They're fraternal twins, obviously.
Well, thank you for clearing that up.
Clarifying
I was
that,
wondering
yeah.
if that was your science fact of the day. Because that's
Sure.
what we
do. Yeah.
We're going to come in with some hot science facts.
Yeah, science facts.
Me and Vinny are going to share. And then we're going to talk to our guest. We do have a guest who's
Yes.
patiently waiting for us to cut the nonsense.
Good luck with that.
And we will eventually, but not quite yet. Vinny, who goes first?
I'll go first.
Go for it.
All right. Mine is about telescopes. Now, as we record this, the Webb telescope has recently launched and not recently launched, but recently released its first set of images. But that's not the telescope I want to talk about. Oh, interesting.
twist.
A twist. Now, Katie,
Yeah.
telescopes.
Oh, boy. I'm going to embarrass myself here.
No. Without sending them into space, it's much
Sure.
easier to build them here on Earth.
I imagine so.
Now, one of the problem with telescopes is that you get interference from the atmosphere. The more air between you and the star, the more interference that the atmosphere causes when you're pointing a telescope at the sky. So where would you want to put a telescope to have the least amount of air?
At the poles?
That's a
No,
good
edit
guess.
that out. Edit that
That's
out.
a good guess.
Edit that out. We're gonna edit all my wrong guesses.
No, it's a good guess. But like, where's a good place?
Space station.
But on Earth, if
Oh,
you're
shit.
on
Cut
Earth
it.
and you want as little air, Where? Where?
Everest.
on top of a mountain, yeah.
Got it on the first
Your
guess.
first guess, yeah. But okay, but let's say you're like in North America and you want to put one up. Where could you put it?
The mountain in Alaska.
A mountain in Alaska is great, very isolated. Now you want it to be very isolated and mountainous. Okay, you want it very isolated because you don't want other light sources to like bleed in to be reflected off the atmosphere. Like in a city, as you drive towards a city, you can see how much light
glow.
pollution there is. It's
Yeah.
just glowing. So the whole atmosphere is a glow. It washes everything out. Okay. So Alaska could be a good place. It's very isolated and it's very mountainous.
Well,
but
thank
can you
you.
think of a nicer place to put it if you're in North America?
Hawaii.
Hawaii is an excellent place. And that is where they have put many
Mauna Loa?
Mauna Kea, if I'm not
Mauna Kea.
mistaken.
Oh, the other one.
The other Mauna, yeah. So Mauna Kea is a mountain where there are many observatories, and for a long time they've been planning to build a 30-meter telescope with a giant mirror, like segmented, because it's really hard to make one giant piece of glass that perfect. So you put it in pieces, but if essentially you have a 30-meter telescope. However, building a telescope on there has been blockaded by the native Hawaiians for many years because it's been run by the University of Hawaii, and the locals have not had a lot of say in how it's being run or what, all the trucks, all the equipment, the construction. It's quite damaging to the environment.
I'm on Team Hawaiians.
I'm also on Team Hawaiians. And so for the last several years, they have not been able to go ahead with construction of this because of the blockades. But recently, the new part is that there's a new commission that's in charge of the mountain. And some of it is, the commission is made up of several people, and some of those people are native Hawaiians. There's people who are practitioners of the local traditions, and so there's also people from Hawaii, the University of Hawaii, on it. There's land use managers on it. There's nature preserve, and so there's a whole now a panel of people who are in charge of the mountain. And to do that, it has 11 members. It's called the Mauna Kea Authority, and they're in charge of it. And because now that there's native participation, it looks like there's a way forward to build this telescope in conjunction and in concert with native Hawaiians.
Now, I have a question.
Yeah.
Because we have this hot new James Webb telescope that's
Yes.
can see, to the dawn of the Big Bang and
Yep.
stuff, why would we need some, I'm sorry,
Yeah, sure.
mediocre earthbound
Sure.
telescope?
Yeah.
What is it going to show us
Great
that this
question.
other guy can't do?
So, the electromagnetic spectrum. Are you familiar with this?
Vaguely.
So we see visual light. We see
Yes.
light, right? It's in the visual spectrum. You might, think of prisms that show up the rainbows, and we see from indigo to red. So there's ultraviolet,
microwaves and all
infrared,
that
microwave.
stuff.
So yeah,
Yes, yes.
the shorter ones are microwaves, the longer ones are radio waves. So the James Webb telescope is specifically built for a set of one region of the electromagnetic spectrum, generally infrared, and in that area, because that passes through interstellar clouds very easily. However, we like looking at pictures with visual in the visual range and the visible spectrum. And so we're going to build a visible spectrum telescope in Hawaii. And so now we actually, when you look at the sky, the telescope can see what we would see as human.
Okay, sure.
So it's just a different part. Things look different in different parts of the spectrum.
Fair enough. Well, I'm glad. It seems like they're going to find a way forward.
Yeah.
Keeps everyone happy.
Yeah.
And is fair and cognizant of the local needs and traditions.
I think that's really important. So I'm happy that both science and the native Hawaiians can.
And I can't believe you're saving this for last, Vinny, but you were one of the chosen people for the 11 people in the commission.
That's right. I'm in charge of bringing chocolate to the meetings. So every week I have to bring a different.
I've heard only half of it tends to make it to the meeting, Vin.
That's a
You know
rumor.
what
It's
the
a vicious.
mystery-
It's a rumor that's been spread by my enemies. Don't know what happened to the other half of that chocolate. Probably a bird took it.
Classic. You ready for my fact?
I would love to hear your fact.
Ready to
Katie.
receive fact?
Fact away.
Okay, so this is, I think, cool. Let's see what you think.
Cool already.
learners.
Already cool.
So, you've heard of dengue fever and
Who
the Zika
hasn't?
virus.
The hottest new fevers
Couple of
and
hot
viruses.
viruses that affect other things, including humans.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they recently found out that mice and people who have dengue and mice who have Zika emit a smell that
Whoa.
attracts
Uh-huh.
the vector that spreads this disease, which is, of course, mosquitoes.
Oh.
So, the smell that they emit is a flowery orange smell. And so it
Okay.
smells sort of like fruit, and mosquitoes are drawn to it.
Right.
And so they're going to seek out, preferentially,
The people who have this.
correct, and end up spreading it more
Oh, no.
efficiently. So the reason for this smell is that it causes people to create a chemical called acetophenone.
Okay.
Not sure about that pronunciation. Let's go with it. Acetophenone,
Acetophenone.
which smells to us anyway.
Fruity.
Like orange blossom, if we were to
Sounds
pinpoint
great.
it. I know, lovely. I
Wow.
love
A great side effect of dengue fever.
I wasn't going to say it. Of course not. Not worth it. Don't do it, people. Buy some perfume. And the reason for that, it's very cool.
Yeah, what's happening
So
there?
when you get affected by the virus that causes dengue fever or Zika virus, that viral infection causes a bacteria in the skin to proliferate.
Whoa.
And that bacteria makes this acetophenone,
Wowie wow.
which smells like oranges. So why, when you're infected with either of these viruses, do you have this bacterial infection?
That's amazing.
Well, it's because the virus causes those hosts, those mammal hosts, to stop making this antimicrobial protein called RELM alpha.
A great name.
Relma. Relma, and another one called Louise.
Oh,
I'm
good
joking.
one.
Okay. So, what's cool is,
Yes.
because we now understand sort of at this
That relationship.
molecular level, there are chemicals that can encourage the creation of Relma, which
So-
would then lead to you not having the bacterial infection and therefore not making the orange smell, and then therefore not getting as
Wow.
as much.
Now, could we give ourselves something to produce DEET?
Still in development.
Yeah, because then we wouldn't have to spray ourselves.
Gotta be honest though, based on those bug sprays, not a great perfume.
Not a
Make
great
that
perfume.
smell like orange blossom.
But we don't want to
Scientists.
smell like orange blossom.
Oh wait, you're right.
Yeah, that
Okay,
would be
wait.
horrible.
Okay, what's the smell?
I'm going to cancel your product.
What's the
That
smell
is-
that you think we
Yeah.
would like and mosquitoes
Those
would
would
hate? That's
not
not
like.
bug spray. Because let's be
yeah.
honest,
It's not a great
it's
smell.
a terrible smell.
Yeah.
It's a terrible smell.
that humans would like.
Yeah.
but bugs would hate.
Correct.
Frogs.
We think we love the smell of frogs.
I know that bugs would hate it.
Hot take. Interesting. A predator.
Bugs would a predator, right? You want
Mm.
to smell like a predator. Who's the most delightfully smelling predator of mosquitoes? That's the real question
That's
here.
a good question.
That's the real question.
So you learners out there, if you know the greatest
if
smelling
you could all go
predator-
smell some bug predators
Mm.
and let us know in the comments, which we don't have,
Well,
you can just tweet at us.
fish would eat mosquito larvae, but I don't want to
Okay.
smell like fish. That's
No,
not a
probably
good
not.
smell.
I'd rather smell like frog.
Okay, to finish this fact, because
Yes.
we've gotten a little away from us. So Relma.
Yes.
Relma is the protein that if you make it, you don't have the bacteria, you don't smell like oranges, you're less likely to be
Got it.
infected. Okay, so what is this chemical that causes you to make Relma in the skin? Well, there's no way you're going to guess this.
No,
so
I
I'm going to
can't.
go ahead. It comes from a medication for humans that is to fight acne. So somehow
Oh.
this Relma protein in the skin is somehow related to acne. 'Cause some acne is caused by bacteria. So this fights the bacteria. So you can give people in areas where there's lots of dengue fever and
Give them
Zika
acne
virus,
medicine.
give them this acne medicine. It's
They
gonna
have great
encourage
skin.
they have great skin, A, fantastic.
Right?
B,
Less Zika and dengue.
less likely to get Zika and dengue.
Wow. Well, who knew?
Rad, eh?
Who knew?
I didn't. That's why it's a fact.
Fun
to
fact.
me.
Science facts. That was great.
Yeah. Well, we're done goofing around.
Yeah.
Ish.
Ish.
I mean, I'm sure we're
We've
going
got plenty
to...
more goofs in the future.
Of course. But we have a guest.
We have a guest. Would you like me to introduce them?
I would love you to, please.
Perfect. All right. Today's guest is Pawel Kudzia. He's currently a PhD candidate in engineering science at Simon Fraser University. His research focuses on understanding the nervous system's control force when our legs strike the ground.
Whoa.
Previously, he's worked on wearable robots for rehab and on the neuromechanics, that's a great word, of walking after a stroke at Harvard University. Pawel enjoys developing algorithms, but when not doing science, he is an avid mountain biker, trail runner, and ski mountaineer based out of Squamish, BC. Hello, Pawel. Welcome to the show.
Woo.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an honor.
Yeah.
This is an area we do not have guests
No.
often. So we have a lot of questions
Body
for you.
robots.
But engineering in general.
Yeah, engineering in general.
We're very bio-heavy, it seems.
Yeah.
Where are all the engineers?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Call
question.
them out, Pawel. this is Pawel calling you out, engineers. So, Pawel, do you want to maybe describe, before we get into your specific research and what you're working on now, what you mean by wearable robots? Are these like Thanos gauntlets? That wasn't a robot.
That's not a robot.
Well, Transformer people?
What about the end of Aliens?
Yeah, great. Yeah. So what do you mean by wearable robots?
So a fun way to think of wearable robots is to think of like those Marvel characters that have all those cool gadgets and features where they can
Hmm.
do superhuman things. I forget the name of that guy.
Iron Man?
Was it Iron Man? I think Iron Man could like he put on this wearable robot and he can jump high and lift things that were much too heavy for him to lift
Yeah, that's got to
without
be
the
Iron
suit.
Man.
So this is one way to think about wearable robots. They sort of augment or enhance our functions as human beings. In most cases, right now, most of these wearable robots are to restore function. So, for example, when someone loses the ability to walk, or they have a disease or neurodegenerative issue where they lose a function, we want to be able to restore that function to a way that can help them live a normal life again. So wearable robots are common in rehabilitation setting to help people walk again, and they're also common in hospitals and all the areas sort of where we're trying to help people. Like for example, prosthetics that could be
Hmm.
considered a wearable robot when someone loses a limb.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, and also just to expand on that, wearables are also used in other things such as sports. So, for example, a lot of people may be wearing a watch that could be considered a wearable robot.
Oh, interesting.
Ah,
Very cool
neat.
applications.
And is there a particular body part you work on? Are you like, I've been working mostly on left arms?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
just want him to say butt.
Yes. Are you doing butt robots? Yes or no?
So I'm specifically interested in walking. So most of my research has focused on just the one body part, I guess, the leg, and specifically the ankle. So
Okay.
we were working on trying to restore function to the ankle. And so after a stroke, people lose
Mm.
their ability to, or they lose some of their ability to perhaps move their ankle. So we were trying to develop a robot that moved their ankle for them at the appropriate time when they're walking. So you can kind of imagine like two bike cables pulling the front and back of the ankle. This is called plantarflexion and dorsiflexion. And the robot just essentially pulls a cable that your muscle would normally be doing, but your muscle is unable to do. And that can help people walk again.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Whoa.
Yeah, and walking is very complicated. It
Yeah.
seems like kids take a long time to
Yeah.
learn how to do it, and it's there's so many moving parts and shifts of center of gravity. So I can only imagine how complicated this problem is to work on. That to the point where you can only focus on one part, just the ankle. It's not like you're working on the whole motion. Just one part of it feels like a huge project.
Well, yeah, the cool thing is like, everybody works on one part and then you can come
Yeah.
together and develop like a full body suit maybe that augments or restores your ability to do something. But yeah, it's so complicated that working on one part alone takes a whole research lab.
Unbelievable.
Whoa.
So I guess the question is, how does walking work? Can you give us the Cliff's notes?
In 50 words or less.
Yeah. No.
I guess it's walking is commonly thought of as like you're just like falling every step and recovering. So our brain and our nervous system and all these parts of our physiology function together to help us to not fall. And when we lose function in some part of our body, we might end up falling. And obviously falling is not good because we can get hurt. And we as humans, we like walking around. We can explore and do all sorts of things. So walking is very important for keeping, a healthy lifestyle and also being happy in general.
So is it true, Pavel, that in our brains, every step we take are in our brain, our dumb brain's like, you're gonna fall, idiot, foot down. You're gonna fall, idiot, foot down. It's never like,
Why is it so offensive? It's so self-deprecating.
or does our brain catch on like, oh, this is a planned pursuit?
Yeah, like are we actively thinking about it every step, you mean? I think that'd be quite consuming if we were actively thinking about it every step. I think it's a passive process that we've been practicing since birth. We have been walking since we were small and we practice every single day when we take a step, and it becomes like this passive process that we obviously don't actively think about.
So you mentioned you work mostly on the ankle. Now this seems like one of the more complicated things to, so if I think about the motion of my knee, That's no offense to the people working on the knee bit, but that's just like a hinge, okay? Easy. All right?
Yeah,
You can
the
do that
knee
in
is
an
easy.
afternoon.
Yeah, we did that already.
Yeah.
Before this meeting.
But the ankle, that has like a much, I don't know the technical terms. I'm not great at
Degrees of
physiology,
motion?
but yeah, it can do spins.
Spins?
Mine can do 360 spins. So that must be really complicated. How do you get a robot? Like, how many strings are involved here if you can move on all these sort of dimensions?
So you're right, it is complicated, and because it's so complicated, commonly we reduce the problem to just moving forward and backwards. So when your foot hits the ground with your heel, and then when your toe lifts off from the ground. So those two motions called plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. You can imagine a bike cable pulling the back of the ankle, and then a bike cable pulling the front of the foot.
Okay.
And so at least the robots that we were working on when I was there, we didn't really work on the side to side kind of rolling motion. We just constrained that motion just to focus on the mechanics of the forward backward motion, because it's a simpler problem that's already complicated enough. Yeah.
So what would be some things that a person would want to do that require the complicated ankle stuff? Like swimming, I don't know.
Skateboarding.
Like yeah. What are the motion types that require fancy ankles?
Fancy ankles.
So if you're just walking forward, let's say you're walking straight on a straight path, then obviously you maybe don't need quote unquote the fancy ankle. But once you start doing like high performance things like changing directions rapidly, jumping, maneuvering the trails, for example, where your body motion is constantly changing direction, then you can kind of imagine that it would be beneficial to have more degrees of freedom, as they call it, in the ankle, where you can move in different planes of motion.
And as you're studying this, are you working on like a physical prototype where there are like cables moving a robot foot somewhere?
Yeah, we would actually, a lot of the testing in these engineering labs, it just happens on like the grad students initially. You know, we are the lab rats, and you know, we're testing these devices on ourselves, testing the software, testing the hardware, and playing around with things until we feel comfortable to bring in people from outside the lab. We call them real world people. So yeah, a majority of the testing happens on ourselves, and that's involving usually the whole team, and everyone kind of contributes different portions of the development. But yeah, the grad students in a lot of these engineering labs are the lab rats.
So what does your day-to-day sort of look like, Pawel? So you're working with prototypes, but like, are you doing programming on the computer? Are you mostly like mechanically adding wires and tweaking the tension? Like, what sort of part of this process is you? All of it?
Oh, definitely not all of it. My interests lie in understanding the biomechanics. So a lot of my time is spent on collecting the data and trying to understand if it is actually helping someone. So we go to a special lab where we put markers on people and we track the way they move. And then we put on the device and we see how the device changes the way that they move. So this involves tracking, for example, not only body mechanics, but the muscle activities and all sorts of physiological signals. And then I take this data and we work on processing this data to try to understand if the device is helping them walk or if it's making it harder for them to walk. And if so, can we develop a better algorithm to sort of move the device or provide things in the device to make them feel a certain way. And so we need to measure that and quantify that with data.
And so can you describe this device to us? Like, what? I'm trying to get a picture of it.
Sort of like it rolls up onto your shank. You guys know what a shank is?
Like the bottom part of my leg?
Yeah, so where the calf is commonly called the shank. So you kind of put like a
long shanks.
You put on a kind of like a sock on the calf, and then another kind of sock on the foot, and the two connect with some cables that are sort of incognito. And then there's little sensors that go on the foot and other places, and then a little control box that goes on the waist. And all of these things work together to track when the foot hits the ground and which phase of the walking motion you're in, to then trigger forces to apply to the foot to help move it.
And are you doing one foot at a time or both feet?
Both feet, right? So yeah, well, it depends actually. So if you only need to help one side, like after a stroke, typically only one side is paralyzed. They call that hemiparesis. Paresis.
Okay.
Sorry, my pronunciation there is correct. I'm an
good.
engineer. So if only one side is impaired, then we would only use such a device on one side to help correct it and restore symmetry in the walking. But if both sides are impaired or both sides need assistance, then both sides.
So you mentioned these devices incorporate like knee and ankle. Is the hip just on its own, or are there any sort of versions of this device that are full leg from butt to toe, or is it just
Knew
like
you were gonna get the button there.
mostly knee and ankle, or is there any hip?
So the knee is easy, obviously. So that
yeah, we've been over that. The knee people.
The knee engineers are bozos. We all know that.
Whoa.
Those guys, yeah, exactly. Now, there's a lot of research happening now on full leg, so hip, knee, and ankle, and a lot of I would say the forefront of engineering is happening at Stanford in the biomechatronics lab, and the work they're doing there is incredible, where they actually showing huge improvements in walking with all three of these major joints being assisted.
Now I feel like there's an unsung hero we haven't talked about yet. 5 little guys who haven't really been mentioned. The toes. Now,
the toes.
What's going on with the toes? Like, what role do toes play in walking?
Great.
Well, so the toes are actually another joint called the MTP joint. I'm trying to remember what that stands for. But there's a hinge, essentially. Metatarsal.
Phalange?
Something joint. MTP.
The mighty toe point.
Well, there are phalanges are like the tips of the toes.
And there's the
fingers
metatarsals.
and metatarsals. Yeah.
So if you imagine your leg, the hip, the knee, and the ankle, and then the toes also have a sort of joint. And those are also important in walking. I'm not sure in terms of these wearable robots if anybody's focusing on the MTP joint, but they do provide important function for jumping and running motions.
That's next gen.
That's next gen. Yeah, that's the next gen.
So you mentioned, Pawel, when you're testing these devices, you're sort of monitoring, I'm sure, a bunch of variables to see if the device is actually making it easier for the person to walk. What are some of like the biggest challenges? Like they were faster, but it keeps causing pain. Like what is like one of the harder things to optimize with these devices?
So in the engineering lab that I worked on, we had, I think, 4 to 7 sewing machines. And so what I'm trying to say there is that the hardest part is actually putting this thing on the person and making it comfortable for them, So attaching things to humans is very difficult. Think about your running shoes, for example. To this day, running shoes still cause blisters, and we've been developing and redeveloping running shoes for hundreds of years, but they're still causing issues, and people find discomfort in this. So you can imagine when you have this device and it's pulling and exerting all sorts of forces, people might be getting sweaty, they might be experiencing all sorts of discomforts. If those things are happening, then the device is not going to function well, or people are not going to use it. So here we are at this engineering lab, but we have, we have designers, we have people from fashion, people from material sciences, all trying to figure out ways to attach this thing to people. And that's, I think, one of the greatest challenges in these wearable robotics category is how do we attach something to someone that encourages them to wear it, is comfortable, doesn't cause rashes, blisters, etc.
Yeah, that's like a huge challenge.
Absolutely. So are there any things you can discuss? I don't know, this seems like the sort of thing that might be on the hush-hush, but like ways that you've optimized or people have tried to optimize them to make them more comfortable?
Yeah, what's
like,
the most comfortable solution so far? A lubricant? Why do you wear lubricants on your clothes? This is a whole other... Like, have you ever used a lubricant to make your clothes more comfortable?
That makes your t-shirts much more comfortable.
All right. Well, this is a big revelation for
blisters.
me. All right.
So there are 2 classes of these wearable robots for the ankle. There are soft ones, which are like kind of fabric and clothing kind of style. And then there are hard ones, which use like metal, for example, aluminum. So I'm just going to talk about the soft ones because that's the ones that I worked on. And essentially the engineering that we were able to achieve there was sort of incredible, getting people from fashion who really understand and know different materials. You can really develop a lot of different prototypes that reduce, for example, sweat and don't move when they attach to the body and allow for comfort. So I don't know the exact materials that the current version of these exoskeleton robots are using, but they've come a long way And really getting people from all sorts of different disciplines to work on this problem together has made a huge, allowed for huge advancements and
That's
innovations
amazing.
in that space.
And I guess the question becomes, what does like the end goal look like to you, at least for this stage? Like, what can you envision it?
Yeah, so the end goal is to develop these robots, and then they can be used in physical therapy for people when they come to do physical therapy, for example, in a facility, but then also taking it home with them. So you can imagine if someone comes to do PT and they get a 1 hour session wearing this wearable robot, but then they can wear it home and continue to have therapy throughout the day or throughout the week. And a physical therapist can monitor how they're doing remotely, because the wearable robot can provide them with data on their computer to see. So I think that's the end goal, is to help people restore walking after a stroke or other neurodegenerative disease, and then to take it home and have more opportunities to train and relearn to walk.
Very cool.
So are there any versions of this that exist in the world, or are they all being like tested and created but aren't available at this point, these robot legs?
Yeah, so the product that I was working on actually ended up being licensed by a robotics company and now is being tested in clinical trials in the United States. So that means that, you know, they're building this product and they're making a company out of it. So it's going to be hopefully in the hands of real people soon.
Whoa.
That's amazing.
Do you have any idea how much one would cost?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the cost, but I think the model that at least would make sense to me is you don't buy the product, but you lease it.
Right.
So you don't have to own it outright, but you can have it for, let's say, a subscription model or something like that, where you're just using it when you need it, or you're renting it out.
That's very cool. And what do they look like currently?
What does this look like?
Yeah, what do the current generation of these assistive devices look like?
If there are any that exist that aren't being tested.
Yeah, I mean, there's a wide spectrum, but most of them kind of, well, not exactly like a pair of pants, but you can kind of imagine like a smart pair of pants where you put it on your leg and
I can imagine a very smart pair of pants.
Yeah, like, you know, it's not like a pair of pants that's going to walk out of the room and leave your house without you. Right. But like, you put it on and it has sensors and functions. It's sort of hard to describe because there's a lot of different engineering designs of these wearable robots, but you essentially slip it on your leg and it kind of looks like, you know, like your pants, I guess.
That's neat. I can imagine though, if you get behind on your payments, you can tell the pants to just walk out of the house.
Yeah,
your pants.
They autonomously walk themselves back to their
that's
their
right. Just like, hey, where's my pants? My pants are going. No, I'm late on my payments.
So these wearable robots, Pawel, are being developed for a very noble cause to help people recovering from stroke. But do you have any deep down fear, since you're sort of on the ground with this research, that this is going to lead to
what?
Everyone wearing these pants out of laziness? You know, everyone's got wearable pants, so we can just phone it in and the pants will walk me to work.
Like a personal body chauffeur.
Yes, personalbodychauffeur.com. Yes.
That is, so there's this world of restoring walking, and then there's this whole world of wearables to augment human function. And so augmentation can take the form of, I guess, performing the duty for the person so that it's easier to do something. So walking, for example, if you put the pants on, is easier to do, and it's augmenting their function. And so your worry is that people start buying these pants and then they just use them all the time and they become like ultimately lazy.
Yeah. Yeah, they just they buy a robot to walk for them. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I'm worried about this
future
that you're working towards.
So
don't put that on Pawel. He's helping people.
I think it'd be exciting if that were the future, because regardless of whether or not the pants are helping you, you'd still be out and about walking around, and walking is always good for you and good for health. Even if the pants are making it easier, I think if it encourages people to get out and walk, that would be an exciting future for me.
It's a big step, right? Get those cars off the roads.
Yeah.
Pants.
You thought it was crazy.
Pants are the future.
But robot pants people are going to save this planet.
RPP.
So, Pawel, how did you get into... So you were an engineer. And somewhere along the line, you're like, wearable robots. So, like, how did you get interested in this line of research?
Yeah, I've always been interested in technology and how people walk. It was a huge interest of mine in undergrad, and I sort of been seeing this trend of wearable technology that people wearable tech, and I just wanted to get into that field myself and start helping out and working in that engineering space. So I just happened to get involved on this exoskeleton project, but I have interest in also in working not only on the ankle but other parts of the body. I think it's exciting, especially now when we look around. We're all kind of wearing tech that gives us physiological information. People really like getting data about themselves. And so as an engineer, I'm excited to kind of think about how we can give people more data that's useful and how we can help them live a easier life or augment their current life in ways that can make them happy or make it easier for them to do certain things. So I don't know if there's a specific moment in time where I just got interested, but I've always been interested in technology and people.
Sure. And ankles are great. We all agree. Ankles are great. They're complicated too, so it's an impressive joint to
choose. Not a snooze fest like the knee.
Not a knee snooze fest.
The knee is,
But if you had to pick another, you mentioned you're interested in other types of motion. Like, what are the other like cool ones besides the ankle, like that you think would be hard from a wearable robot perspective?
So there's a lot of teams now working on the back, on the lower back, to assist in picking up heavy items. So you can imagine a factory worker who has to lift many boxes per day, or a mover, or any sort of heavy lifting situations. There are teams working on these robots that reduce the strain on the back. So you put it on like a fancy jacket, and you turn it on, and it helps you not feel that strain from the load.
Wow.
That is rad. That would be good for like weightlifters too.
The Olympics?
Well, just like people, my dad had like a belt he would wear. It wasn't a robot belt. It was just like a cool leather belt. But I don't know. In retrospect, I don't know what it was doing.
Well, I think you get back support from those.
Yeah, sure.
But like wearing a robot jacket to help you do weightlifting feels like self-defeating. Like the point is you're not getting the
to protect your back.
Oh, just to protect your back. Just like a reinforcement.
It's about they're not trying to get the goal of weightlifting isn't to punish the lower back. That's a sad side effect.
I've done it wrong.
Yes. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that is so many cool wearables. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess I imagine like the arms too would be another like a hand, things that grip and pick up, and like robots in factories like that can grip.
Yeah, and you can imagine that eventually when these are sort of part of the mainstream, the insurance companies could provide like some financial backing for certain companies to provide this to all their employees, so that if you're lifting all day, it doesn't feel as hard on the body.
Unbelievable.
Hopefully something to hope for to the Amazon factory or warehouse workers.
Any workers.
Yeah, but then we'll have pants that walk themselves and jackets that
that's
themselves. At what point are we human and at what point are we a cyborg, right?
I like the idea that they discover that these pants can walk themselves. We don't even need the person. So you just have these pants walking around doing the jobs of people. So Pawel, tell us about your sort of scientific journey. Were you always interested? Were you like part of the robotics team as a kid? Like, where did you get into?
Why did you say it like that?
I don't know. Cool surfer nerd voice. How did you get into like science in general? Were you always interested?
In high school, I wasn't on the robotics team, unfortunately, or as you said, robotics. I was actually dancing for I guess I was Polish dancing a lot in high school. That was like my thing. So I would travel around the United States and even around the world to perform these heritage dances.
Whoa.
And I got into that mainly because my mother told me that she would buy me a computer if I started dancing.
Good work. Good work.
That was the incentive, but then it became like super fun because I would hang out with my friends and we would dance and do these fun things. So that was my high school experience. But I was always very like mathematically focused. In high school, I wasn't very diversified. I only tried hard in math and physics. And then the other courses, I didn't really like apply the same amount of effort. I just didn't feel like excited about them.
Sure.
But my perspective has changed. I'm really much more well-rounded now. I'm interested in all sorts of things. But in high school, it was just math and physics. So I thought I should just go into engineering, and so I applied to that, kind of not really understanding or knowing what it was at that point. I was, just 17 years old, and I went into that, and then kind of got exposed to the world, and I realized, I actually really like this space where I get to learn cool things and tinker and write computer code to see like things progress and how they work. So that's kind of my journey into engineering.
Now, I need to circle back to your career as an international Polish dancing
Yes,
champion.
agreed.
No, not champion. It was recreational. It wasn't competitive.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's really cool that you got to travel with that.
That's amazing. How is that missing from your bio? That's a very cool backstory.
Well, looking back at it, I didn't realize how cool it was at the time. But then, now when I look back at it, it's like, obviously I was a teenager who had all these experiences to go without my parents. So, but looking back at it, I didn't realize like how fortunate I was to have been a part of this kind of dancing team. I thought it was I was a little bit shy about it, to be honest.
So I have two major questions.
I'm surprised it's only two.
I could spend an hour. I'm trying to
Yes.
trying to pare it down.
Yeah.
Number one, do you think that this time spent dancing sort of got you interested in how the human body moves? And number two, did your mother follow through and get you a sick computer?
So number one, maybe passively, like subconsciously, it did, because dancing is a really complex movement where you're moving. Not only you're trying to coordinate your legs and your arms, and starting to coordinate with other people. So maybe at some sort of subconscious level, it started it all for me.
Yeah.
And in terms of the computer, yes, I got a computer that had a wireless keyboard and a wireless mouse, which at the time was like a huge deal. This would have been like 2006 or something, 2005. So
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's still pretty cool.
Yeah, back in those days, it was unheard of to have this sort of technology. Yeah, and I can connect to the internet at home, which was also very exciting.
Whoa.
Very well. Thank you, Mrs. Kudzia.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and okay, well now I also want to get into the mountain biking, trail running, ski mountaineering. Like it sounds like were you always like really outdoorsy, or is this like part of being in BC, which is like a very outdoorsy place?
I've always been really passionate about the outdoors. I think it's a place for me to think deeply and kind of get away from all sorts of emotions. Mountain biking, trail running, and all these activities that I really enjoy allow me to kind of relax. And if I have problems in research, I can really sometimes solve them on my mountain bike, not being in the space and just being outside and, doing something else really helps me in science, and it makes me happy. It makes me feel good. So it's sort of like this double whammy where I get to process problems, but also am happy doing them,
Totally.
Yeah.
So because you sort of you understand sort of what's going on with motion a lot better than us dum-dums over here, when you're biking, does your brain ever get like, oh, now this tendon's pulling on this tendon? Like, you ever go into biomechanic man mode when your body's moving?
I love your voices when you talk about science. Yeah. No, it's great. It's very accurate, I'm sure.
So I want you to imagine thinking about your tendon or muscle moving when you're walking and trying to control that. It would be insane. There's
right, yeah.
There's so many different electrical signals that go into every single muscle. So this is a passive process that we don't actively think about. If we did, our cognitive loads would be just consumed by thinking about these signals. So no, I don't think about it in such a low level sense, but I do think about the biomechanics in terms of like my mind allowing my body to do something when I'm on the bike. Because sometimes, especially here in Squamish, there's a lot of features or rock where you bike on, and you really have to commit. You have to, be in the moment, be present, and move your body with a certain purpose. And in those moments, I really think about that, about how incredibly cool it is that I'm able to do this and put myself in this position and then succeed biking down this really steep or crazy feature. So I think it's really incredible what our bodies can do. And there's still so much to discover about the brain and our function work and how we work.
That's amazing. Now, my big question to kind of wrap this one up is, do you have any non-foot related things in your life?
I'm trying to think. Like, like things related with the hands.
Yeah, or anything that's like...
He plays drums, but just a double bass drum.
just the kick pedals.
So I guess
Just
it's
a
funny.
bass drum and a hi-hat.
Yeah, I've been in research for maybe about 10 plus years now, and I don't think I've ever worked on anything except the legs, and more specifically the foot.
Right.
So I would be completely lost if I had to work on the hands or like the arms.
And then even all of your hobbies are like leg and foot related.
Yeah. So,
it's not like your hobbies are knitting and like...
He does, but with his feet.
But with his feet, well, there's a talent. That's amazing. Thanks for
when I develop like models and stuff, none of them have like an upper body usually. So it's sort of funny. Yeah.
Just like from the hips down.
Now, Pawel, we've noticed something's missing. The top half.
Yeah.
Maybe some charcoal portraiture might...
Of legs.
Of legs.
The upper body is foreign to me.
Yeah. Unnecessary, really.
Yeah.
You walk without moving your arms. So what's next for Pawel? We're not going to ask the dreaded question of when you're going to finish your PhD, you know. But what do you see in your future? Are you like doubling down on the legs and feet for life, or you want to look at other types of biomechanics? Do you think you want to stay in academia or move into industry? Where do you see your future?
This is a really tough question, guys. But I think
it's okay if you don't have an answer.
We're going to mark down your prediction and see if
this
you
question
follow
actually
through.
comes from your parents.
If you say the right answer, you get a second computer.
I would really love to kind of work in the kind of, I guess, sports industry and rehab industry combined. I would love to work on wearables, you know, developing algorithms and hardware to either help people restore motion or provide athletes with information. I'm really excited about the space, and I think wherever I can work on in that area would be some place I'd feel happy.
Cool. I'm going to guess soccer, the most foot-related sport of all.
Yeah, soccer would be awesome. A lot of legs and feet.
I think a lot of these international like teams now have wearables for like tracking and sense gathering, like how far they've run. All sorts of information is now being picked up by wearables and tracking. It's amazing. Yeah, and the future is only going to get more and more involved too.
Very cool. Well, I think we're out of time.
Yeah.
Pawel, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your research and your interests and your cool backstory and your love for legs.
So many fun topics.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Pawel.
Thanks so much for having me. It was really fun.
Yeah, and good luck in the future. Whenever it kicks off.
I'm sorry. Good. No, it was good. It was good. Wow, how cool was that?
Very cool. I love it when we have guests that I have no idea.
Oh, I have no idea
how this works.
Yeah.
I really, we've been watching a space show for all mankind.
Yes.
And there's a lot of engineers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I realized I don't know what's on their computers. Like, I have no idea what the research of an engineer looks like.
It's a whole other field, like of applied science and this is like a way of applying it in such a intimate way, like something that we don't think about, take for granted, and there's so much going on there that of course it would take teams around the world to kind of just capture a part of it.
Yeah, and it must be very complicated. Like, even if you nail one joint, when those lazy knee people, I'm joking, but like to coordinate how all these things work, it's like a dance on its own.
Oh, good one.
Well, that was great.
Good stuff, Katie.
It was a great interview. I enjoyed our facts.
Good
Thank you for sharing about that telescope in Hawaii.
And thank you about orange smelling people.
Orange smelling people. Yeah. The viruses that cause orange smells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Well, do you want to send everyone off on our socials?
If you're looking for us on social media, check out LRG Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. LRG Pod. If you're a grad student in Canada in the STEM fields and you'd love to be a guest in our show, just send us an email at learnrealgoodpodcast@gmail.com. That's learnrealgoodpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you're a learner out there who likes our podcast, we would love if you could share our podcast with a friend or family member you think might be interested. Give us a 5-star review or less if you feel like that's warranted. And a written review would be fantastic, because to date,
still to this date,
one written review at the time of this recording, which we're very grateful for.
Thank you.
We know you're listening.
We can do more.
You can see the downloads.
It really does help the algorithm. We're all subservient to the algorithm.
Yes.
So reviews and ratings and shares all help us out.
Thank you, Vinny.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Pawel. And thank you, learners out there. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.